Welcome to the next episode of the CAPB Podcast. I am delighted and honoured to have veteran legendary status and an absolute force of nature in the veteran space, Mark Ormrod. How are you, my friend?
Do you want the honest answer?
Yeah, please, yeah.
So, for those that can't see, I'm wearing a very tight t-shirt, otherwise known as a rash guard, which is particularly made for a sport called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I've been training this morning, getting my ass whipped. So you ask how I am? Pretty shit. My neck hurts, my arm hurts, my back hurts, but I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'll try and add some value to what it is that you lads do.
Mate, you probably smell as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I reckon.
I shouldn't admit this because Royal Marines have a reputation for showering 47 times in a day. But I haven't showered since I trained because I went straight into a call, straight into lunch, and then straight onto this with you lads. So, yes, I stink and I'm sore. But it's all good. It's all good.
Mega. Mark, your story is well documented. You have written a best-selling book. There's been a documentary. There's been movies. Okay. But just for the viewers and listeners of the CAPB Podcast, just give us an overview of your military career.
So I joined the Royal Marines when I was 17 years old, straight out of school in February 2001. Went through training, was fortunate enough to make it through first time without any injuries or without failing anything. Passed out October 2001, just after 9/11. Was trained early 2002 to go to Afghanistan on Operation Jacana, but didn't end up going. 2003 came around, deployed to Iraq on Operation Telic 1 when I turned 19. Spent 3.5 months out there. Came back all in one piece, physically and mentally. Left the Royal Marines shortly after that, after serving my minimum term of 5 years because my eldest daughter was due to be born. Retrained as a bodyguard. Failed miserably as a civilian. So I went running back to the warm love and embrace of the Royal Marines. That was early 2007. I went straight into pre-deployment training with 40 Commando for a 6-month tour of Afghanistan on Operation Herrick 7. Hit the ground September 2007. And then Christmas Eve that year, I was out on a routine foot patrol, second in command of a section of 8 men. And on the way back into camp, I stood on and detonated an improvised explosive device, which traumatically amputated both my legs above the knee and my right arm above the elbow, making me the UK's first triple amputee from the conflict. So, evacuated from a minefield, died, brought back to life, wrapped in bandages, flown home Christmas Day 2007, 1 week in intensive care, 5 other weeks in hospital, about 1.5 years of rehab, left the military on the 1st of July 2010, then went on some crazy adventure as a dirty civilian, trying to figure out my life and see what the limited skills I had acquired in the military could bring to the civilian world. And it has been nuts. It's been intense at times. It's been challenging at times. It's been incredible at times. But, you know, it's been a roller coaster. But I've loved every minute of it. The people that I've met, the things I've been fortunate enough to do. And I feel like I'm only just starting. I feel like there's plenty more to go. I feel like I'm almost reaching the peak of the next stage. You know, every stage you go across it, you go through the challenges, and it feels like you're wading through treacle trying to achieve your goals. And then all of a sudden something happens and you fly up to that next level. But then you start again. Then you're wading through treacle again, you know, facing these challenges. But I understand that now. You know, in the beginning, when I left and transitioned out of the military, I didn't quite understand that and I struggled with it. Now I understand it, and I understand it to a point where actually I look forward to it. I look forward to the difficulties because I know what comes after them. You know, so yeah, we're in a good place right now. I think I was a Royal Marine, so maths are not my strong point, but we're 14 years deep now into life as a veteran. And like I said, some of it's been challenging, but I would say the good definitely outweighs the bad. And I credit a lot of that to the day and age that we live in and the different the way that veterans are looked at now and perceived in society, and the opportunities that come as a result of that.
I think, yeah. I mean, first of all, it's even listening to it, even you giving the whistle stop tour. You know, I joined in '98. Paul joined shortly after. We both served in Iraq. We both served in Afghanistan. And I think one of the standout things for me was from yourself was marching to get your medal. You know what I mean? I remember that. It sticks out vividly. There's a few things with you that stick out vividly for me. That was the first one. The second one is when you were a veteran, I think it was a couple of years ago, you were training for an event, a 5K. And I remember it was that, I think you tripped up on and you picked yourself up and went again. And it was one of them. It was strange, Mark, you know, because it was, I don't know you personally, but it was like a real emotional thing. I must have watched that video 4 or 5 times before it sort of sank in, like, holy fuck, man. Do you know what I mean? It, like, you're 10 years post injury or whatever it was, and nothing gets easier. That's how I saw it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm an outsider looking in, mate.
I mean, that's how it is. You know, when you suffer, I was going to say traumatic physical injuries, but it's the same with the mental injuries as well. It doesn't really get easier. You just figure out other ways to deal with it, and you adapt around it. And that's a good example of it. I was out for a training run. We were in between those like lockdown periods where you're allowed out for a bit. And I was out with my coach, who's also a former Royal Marine, and we were running in the park. And because of the lockdowns, I couldn't get my legs serviced or aligned properly, so they were completely jacked up. And I fell over after about 2K because I was tired. And someone that was with us happened to be filming it. And Ben offered to help me up. And I think there's a little bit, I don't want to ruin the magic of the moment, really, but Ben went to help me up, which I think most people, that would be their natural response. But it's actually worse when people help you up, because especially someone like Ben, who's very, very strong, they hoy you up. But what it does, you end up going right back over again. So I was like, no, dude, I'm good. Let me do it my way. I've got a technique. So it wasn't like get out my way, I'm picking myself back up. It was just like, no, this is going to be easier if I do it on my own, mate. But don't let that ruin the magic. Don't let that ruin the magic.
It definitely doesn't ruin the magic.
No magic ruin.
Yeah, it was just a bit easier when I do it. Some people have done it before. You know, when I was learning to walk, I remember I was at like a charity event, and I don't even know how, but I fell over in a tux, and all these people ran around to pick me up, and they ended up throwing me into the middle of someone's dinner table and like spilling drinks everywhere. And I'm like, I got a little bit annoyed and angry. I said, look, just leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. I know you're trying to help me, but look how bad you're making it. Give me some space and let me do my thing. And then I got up. So yes, I've just learned over time that as well-intentioned as some people can be, sometimes it achieves the opposite of what they aim to achieve.
Mate, I honestly, from a physical point of view, what you said there, I can see it. But it's also like, when you think about it, there's people often try and help. And it might be like because you're feeling a bit miserable or you're having a bit of a rough day or whatever. And people try, what you need to do is this. And right. You're like, yeah, it's that.
Yeah, what you need to do is fuck off. That's what you need to do. That's what you want to tell them. Yeah. Ultimately, yeah.
Yeah. Mate. Yeah, they were well-intentioned, didn't they? But I've got to that point now. I'm so used to it. I can be polite to them and still do what I need to do.
Mate, you're a total inspiration, mate. And one of the things that links to, if you know, as a seamless link, let's say, from that was you were training for a charity event. And if we talk charity, Mark, you've raised nearly £700,000 for charity.
On this campaign.
The current campaign.
It's about 5 mil in total.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Over all the different things, over all the years, whether on my own or part of a team, or mentoring and supporting other people into what they're doing. But I've been at it for like 14 years though, so it's not like I did it in a year. I've been constantly smashing away at it for years, doing all sorts of different things.
It's still an incredible achievement though, to be able to raise.
Do you know what it is, right? Again, I don't want to ruin the magic, but I'll tell you, when I was discharged, being a Royal Marine or being any military man or woman, being physically fit is a big part of our identity, right? And before I was discharged, I went to America and I got mentored by another triple amputee. And they taught me how to run, how to swim, and do all these things. So when I came home, this whole new world was open to me, where I could swim again, run again. So in my mind, I'm like, right, I want to do these things. And I just happened to fall into a job working for a charity. So I'm like, this is perfect. On a selfish note, I can go out and see how far I can run, how fast I can swim, and all this lot. But then on a selfless note, I can raise money at the same time. So I'm doing it for me, really. But then as a happy consequence, I can put a fundraiser up online and people go, oh, that's pretty cool. And then they donate money. So it was like the best of both worlds. I got to push myself and see what I could do, but also raise money at the same time.
Honestly, mate, it's inspirational. It really is. And I imagine you get that a lot, the inspirational stuff. I think, just steering off charity a second, one of the most inspiring things I get from you is your outlook, Mark. Your outlook on social media, your view on resilience, your take on some things is just like phenomenal, and it really makes you like reflect back on yourself and think, yeah, I could have dealt with that better. It does for me anyway.
And that's because I'm a huge advocate of this, right? In my mind, and I might be wrong, it's just an opinion, most people think that learning stops when you leave school, right? Or college or university, whatever it is, right? I'm not academic, but I love like personal development. So back when I was in rehab, and even before that, before I was injured, I had my nose in personal development books, and I've trained in neuro-linguistic programming and as a coach, and I read the right stuff, whether it's Tony Robbins or Jocko Willink, leadership manuals, and I learn all this stuff, and they all think differently, which is why they're so successful. And I picked up a lot of tools along the way, especially from neuro-linguistic programming, about how to reframe situations, how to look at them differently, and then reading leadership books about leaders I respect and look up to and how they deal with failure or they've done something wrong and they take accountability and ownership of it. And, and you think differently. So when something, one of the big things that always stuck with me was someone, and I forget who said it, right? They said, what happens to you, whether that's you get physically injured or you get divorced or you lose your job, it may not always be your fault and it may not be fair, right? So your partner might cheat on you, leave you, take half your house, totally unfair, right? I acknowledge that. It isn't always fair and it isn't always your fault, but it is always your responsibility to do something about it. You sit there bitching, moaning and complaining and the years go by and you're no better off, no further forward. But if you just as soon as you can go, right, that sucks, that was shit, but it's my responsibility to make it less shit or not shit or good, and then it changes, your mindset changes. But it's hard. That took training because I was young and immature and emotional, but I've learned, from going to seminars and, like I said, reading books and being mentored about different ways of thinking, different ways of approaching things. And it's still difficult sometimes, but it's served me well to this point.
It's such a good outlook, mate. It's such a good outlook.
Yeah. And I have to constantly remind myself sometimes, because even now I could tell you a million stories about people that have, even in this situation, that have ripped me off in business, that have slandered my name, have told lies about me. And my old instinct would be, safety catch off and just attack. But I don't do that anymore. I sit back and I'm like, this will figure itself out with time. I just keep doing my thing, keep being me, keep doing what I'm naturally aligned to do. And eventually it will come out in the wash. And that person, they're spending all their energy and focus on whatever it is to do with breaking me and slandering me. It's almost like they're on a treadmill and I'm on a 5K outside and I'm moving forward and they're just on the spot going round and round and round. And eventually they wake up. Like a couple of years later, they wake up and I've got, another business, another opportunity, a book coming out. And they've gone from living in their home to living in a 1-bedroom flat to losing their, and then they have this epiphany. They're like, oh shit, maybe I should have focused that energy on myself rather than on that guy, you know? So you just got to, it's hard, but it works.
It works well, mate. It works really well. I've got, Paul, you were talking about jiu-jitsu before Mark came on, weren't you?
Yes. So I've got, so first and foremost, right? Gi or no gi?
I'm edging more nowadays towards no gi.
I was solely gi. I don't mind no gi. It was all right. I just didn't like the heel hooks and things like that. They hurt a lot. Gi, I like it. It's very slow in comparison.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I've had to stop training because there's nowhere around. This office that I'm in now used to be full to the floor with mats, and I used to get 5 or 6, my mates coming around, and we would just roll on a Friday, rolling a beer on a Friday, right? And then there was a local club, and it was great. And then the local club moved like an hour and a half away, and because I live in the middle of fucking nowhere, I was like, that's 3 hours traveling straight away, 2 hours training, 3 days a week. I've got a family, and I don't want to come home and have a roll and get beaten up by the you know what I mean? Like, I've got to sort of. So, what I do now, I mean, one of my best mates who listens to the podcast, he's constantly doing jiu-jitsu and constantly like, you're a fanny, you need to get back on the mats. And I'm like, yeah, I know I need to get back on the mats. I'm like, and every time I catch up with him, he's like, right, okay, yeah. So, so that's my sort of wank story about it. But did you do jits before everything, or was it a culmination of after everything?
It was after, but before I was injured, I used to fight as a kickboxer, Muay Thai, and then in the Marines, I did boxing. So after I was injured, and that was right up to until I was injured, and I did it from about 13 years old. It was a massive part of my life. When I was in hospital, the two things that really bothered me were thinking that phys and martial arts are out of my life forever.
Yeah.
And I eventually managed to get back into phys. I had a friend who owned a gym. He gave me a key. I used to go in at 5 a.m, and when there's no one in there, so I could play with different arms, different legs, different attachments, and figure out various routines and what worked for me with either machines or free weights or cardio. And I eventually got that back in my life. But with martial arts, I had actually been approached by someone in the karate world, and I think it was someone in the taekwondo world, who had offered to train me and said that they could legitimately get me to a black belt level. Now, I knew that I couldn't do that because if you ain't got legs, you can't kick, right? And I just knew from my previous experience that I wouldn't be able to do half the stuff, and that if I did get to a black belt, it would have purely been just some sympathy thing. And then I met another Royal Marine called Sam Sheriff. Now, Sam was the one who was beating me up this morning in my garage, but he was a colour sergeant, physical training instructor, rehabilitation specialist, purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the time. He had introduced Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to the Royal Marines and made it the most popular sport in the Corps, beating football, rugby and boxing.
Fucking hell.
Now, we didn't know each other before. He introduced himself to me. We're in Stonehouse Barracks in the Sergeant's Mess, and he took me down to what he called the combat room, which was just a squash court on camp that he had put mats down on the floor and on the walls. And when he first told me about it, my instinct was, oh, here we go again. Just some another knobber trying to, put me in a martial art because they feel sorry for me. And, but because he was a bootneck, I was like, okay, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. So as we were going down there and I was taking my legs off and he was explaining it to me, he said, and by the way, as a child, did a little bit of Japanese jiu-jitsu. I didn't know what Brazilian jiu-jitsu was. And he started explaining it to me. And he said, it's a ground-based grappling system. Right? So I'm sat on the floor taking my legs off on the ground thinking, okay, cool, I'm halfway there. I'm on the ground. Now what do we do? And then he explained it to me, what the objectives were and how we might be able to adapt some techniques. So we rode around for a bit. And I remember feeling just so sick. Like my body wasn't used to being upside down, inside out. I was getting a headache. I felt seasick, like I was going to throw up, and we weren't even going that hard. And after about 45 minutes, I think it was an armbar. He showed me what an armbar was, and we played around with adapting it, and I was able to like put one on legitimately. And then we both kind of sat there and thought, there's a lot more to this, I think. And so we carried on training. I carried on learning, and it was difficult for me because I don't know what it's like starting Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the traditional way of going to a club. And I remember through Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, karate, all these things I tried when I was little, you used to turn up and like the white belts go over here and the yellow belt, and you learn like in stages, right? And you learn the names of these things. But I was just thrown in, and he's saying all this stuff to me, and it's like another language. And it took me about 5 years to even understand what any of it was. I just kept turning up and pretending I knew what was going on. And then eventually I'd watch a YouTube video and they'd say something that someone else had said. And I'm like, oh, that's what that is. And started piecing it together. I still don't know what most of it is. Like people start talking about all these, I think because I don't do a lot of it, you know, they're on about X guard and spider guard and these things that I can't do. And I'm like, I don't need to know them anyway. So it doesn't matter.
You don't need to know them.
And just focused on what I could do and how I could adapt it. And then I got to a point where, you know, I started competing. And I had to compete sometimes against able-bodied people because there's a lack of para competitors. And I started realizing after a couple of competitions where able-bodied people that had both arms, both legs, and normally were about 20 kilos heavier than me, couldn't submit me. And I'm like, this must be really weird for them, right? They must turn up on the mats and be like, the first time they see me is when we slap hands and fist bump. And I reckon in their mind, they're probably thinking, am I supposed to go full on in this guy or do I hold back? And in my mind, I'm like, that's your fucking problem, mate. So like, you and then they come at me. And then where they're normally, because, you know, in jiu-jitsu, there are like steps and, you know, grab this, do that. They can't grab shit with me because I haven't got it. You said earlier about the heel hooks in no gi. I've got no issues with that because no one can do that. And then they've got to try and learn in the moment, how do I deal with this guy? And all I've got to do is defend my neck, defend my left arm, and I'm good to go. So it's hard for them. And I've won a couple comps.
Mark, you know, it is honestly, it's like when you said it's their problem, it really is because you've had to overcome so much to be on the mats. And I think just before we go any further, like huge shout out to Sam Sheriff, by the way, because he didn't need to contact you. No. He didn't need to put the time in. And I've seen some stuff recently with Sam. I mean, he's about to embark on the most ridiculous challenge with this. Yeah, absolutely. See, in fact, shout out to the Royal Marine community, really, because John Payne has just done the vertical marathon. You guys are wired differently, man. You guys are totally wired differently.
Yeah, that thing was nuts. Sam just got back from that. He went up to support him. But this dude climbed Ben Nevis 33 times. Like, sometimes he did it up and down 3 times in a day.
Mate, and what I loved about it, because I followed him vividly. I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of like John beforehand. I follow a lot of veterans and a lot of stuff on social media. He was so brutally honest about how hideous it was and about how lonely it was and about how, do you know what I mean? And there was he put a video out once he'd finished, and he was like, I didn't know whether I was supposed to leave, because he did it. For those who are listening, please find him. His name Jonathan Payne. He did the whole thing staying in a truck. He wasn't staying in a hotel with masseuses sorting him out. He was literally living in a truck.
In a tent box.
And like, you know, getting his dry kit on and going again. And he was, at the end of it, he was genuinely like, I don't know, am I supposed to leave the mountain now? Where he'd been there for 14 days, non-stop, going up and down it, as you say, to cover the distance of a vertical marathon. It's crazy. And Sam Sheriff's challenge, his sky climb, is, again, it's just, yeah.
One of the things we want to focus on next year, because I'll be honest, it pisses me off a little bit, is like marketing with social media. Because like you said, right, that guy's just climbed Ben Nevis, 33 times. He's lived in a tent box. He's eaten off of a jet boil. He's done it proper hard routine, but hardly anyone knows about it. And that annoys the hell out of me. It's like this, everyone should know. And Sam went nuts he was ringing everybody, like all the media up in Scotland, all the papers, all the news, and no one like takes an interest. And I'm like, how, like, this is phenomenal. Like, how can you not take an interest in this? Like, this should be everywhere, So I really want to, this is probably the first time I've said it out loud, but once I get this truck pull out the way, I was talking to Sam this morning, I'm stepping back from the physical events myself. Not for any particular reason. Like, my body feels great. I just feel like where my time will be better spent is by building an army of other people that want to do cool shit and like mentoring them through it. Because there's loads of people out there who, I don't know if this is the right way to phrase it when I say that they lack purpose, but they need something like that. They want to give and contribute, but they're maybe sat on the sidelines for a variety of reasons. Like, they don't know where to start, or they're intimidated, or whatever it is. But I'm going to use my social media to try and build like an army of fundraisers. And then I'm going to figure out how to market this properly so that all these people doing these phenomenal things are out there and everyone's seeing it. You know what I mean? So that between us, I know people are going to listen to this, but I couldn't imagine what's going through that lad's mind right now. I'd be, even though he didn't do it for himself, right? But I'd still be pissed off. Like, I'd be like, why hasn't anyone seen this? Like, I'm in clip. I've been ragging my body and my mind for 14 days or however long it was. My feet are in pieces, my back's in pieces, everything's broken. But it's like the world doesn't care.
I get it. And this is the thing, like, whether this gets cut out or not, I don't really care. But I was watching BBC The One Show yesterday, or it was on in the background, and Paddy McGuinness, who I like Paddy McGuinness, he's a bit of a legend. He's essentially cycling like 70 miles on a rally chopper for children in need.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He raised yesterday, he's been doing it for 4 days. Yesterday broke £1 million.
Yeah. So
it's like it broke £1 million. Whereas, it's like, yeah, exactly. And it's like, how do you, and I get that it's TV and I get it's a celebrity and stuff, but I think your selflessness, Mark, again, to work out how we can, as a veteran community and how as a military community, we can get the best out of social media, because you're very good on social media. Your social media is on point. And we've had a couple of people on the podcast who were just fucking really good. We had an ex-RAF regiment guy, a guy called Jack Wiles, and he set up a company called Rugby Buckets. And what he does is make rugby bucket hats out of old shirts.
Okay.
Right? And he's gone from zero, making them in his house, to having 70,000 followers on Instagram, collaborations with Joe Marler, with professional contract with Exeter Chiefs, making hats. Amazing. Learning that way, uses social media well. Another guy, Tom Collins, ex-Signals, personal trainer, very good at social media. But then there are so many of us, like even the podcast, for example, right? We're just not very good at it. No, we think we're good at it. And because we're military, right? I spent 23 years in the military. And when I left, I would say, I was like, I know everything about my job, possibly. No one could tell me about my job. And then we leave and we have this like just lack of knowledge. And this may be this lack of humility to be able to go, can someone give me a hand with how make this have some impact?
I think it's a little bit more as well. I think we have whenever we were out there doing our things, right, we generally never did it for the plaudits, right? We did it for the person to the left and right of us, the person that was in our foxhole, the person that was in RPB, right? We never got back, and we are shit at self-promoting as a community. Self-promoting ourselves. We are rubbish because we go, I'm just doing my job. I'm just doing this thing. This is normal in my head to run the vertical marathon, to do this, to run an ultra, to do this. It's all normal in my head. And that's where I think we struggle. I struggle, like even simply having a yearly review at work. And they go, you've done this. And I'm like, mm-hmm. And they're going, any more reaction? And I'm like, I'm just doing my job. And I think it's that element of, I wouldn't say self-doubt, it's just that element of we don't do it enough. We're not hey guys, look, it's me, Lord Flashheart, all that kind of fucking fun stuff. We're just very shit at it, I think.
Mark, what advice would you give to people? What advice would you give to about social media?
Well, first of all, Paul, you're exactly right. And it took me years to feel comfortable with like, I told a story when I was doing a talk earlier in the week about motivational speaking. I did it for 10 years for nothing because I didn't feel people actually would pay me to do it. Right. And I told a story after, and I was explaining it. I said, listen, this is the thing about the military, right? I said, I could run into a hail of bullets, rescue 50 people, get a Victoria Cross. But if I'm sat here like on a podcast telling you the story, you'd be like, shut up, dickhead, you're boring. Right? Because it's just the banter that we've got, right? So you're very in the military, I think you stay a little bit humble, right?
Yeah.
And then when you come into the civilian world, you kind of stay that way. And what's irritating is what you see now in social media. If you're a narcissistic, megalomaniac, egotistical guy who's not really got anything to say, but just puts a camera in his face every day, you get loads of views and you become like popular on social media. You know, like that girl the other day, twee, you know, millionaire overnight. And I'm like, for what? Like, you know, it's a weird world out there. So you've got to try and, as hard as it is, you've got to try and get over that, oh, I'm just doing my job thing, and just put yourself out there. And I think that this is where I'm at now and where it works for me is the things I said before. When yes, I'm doing it for myself, right? Because I've got a family. But the bigger picture is the veteran community, right? And what we can do for them. So like I said about the whole social media thing, if I can figure out a way to use what's already out there to take people like that have these businesses or these services and blow them up, then I want to do that. You know what I mean? I've got a few ideas and bits and pieces bubbling away, but the bigger picture is I want to help the veteran community to thrive in whatever it is they're doing. You know what I mean? And be out there, because social media breaks me. And there are a lot of men and women out there for the military that have got incredible experiences and a lot of value to add that can help the next generation by doing stuff like this, by talking, creating content, getting it out there. And, you know, hopefully it lands on the right ears and good things happen as a result of it. But it's just getting them to be a little bit less humble and think about the bigger picture. And that helps. When you stop it being about you and it's about a bigger picture, you're less inhibited to go out and like hit the record button. I think
it's mega advice, mate. And I think one of the things that, like, I spoke to you before we started recording about, you know, where the podcast came from. And it came from 3 years of doing nothing, mate. It came from 3 years of talking about it. And then it was like, when we decided to do it, we started and we recorded an episode with a friend of ours. And it was, I'm not going to lie to you, find it. It was the worst episode we've done, you know, but we'd created a podcast. We'd created a front cover with Canva, but we created a podcast. We didn't have microphones, so you could hardly hear it. You could hear, like, my dog's barking. You could hear the heater. You could hear everything. So you learn, don't you? And you react to feedback. And that's one of the things that I do in my job. It's one of the things that we do all the time. It's like, is take that feedback and go, okay, cool. People saying, love the idea of the podcast. Sounds not great. Right, let's do something about it. And now, as I say, all we've done is we use a different platform in Riverside. We're getting better at it. And we've got microphones. That is it. And the guy who we had on the first episode, who's a veteran, Remy veteran, a guy called Wayne Smallman, shout out Wayne Smallman. He was like, do you guys want a hand? Right? Yeah. And he was like, because I'm really interested in this kind of stuff. But if you need me to produce it. And basically that's what he does. We record the episodes and then he'll do a bit of editing. We'll send him what we think we should turn into shorts. And now just between the three of us, we're at episode, I think this is our 17th recording. And for us, that's blows our mind. You know, it blows our mind.
We only meant to do 5.
We said 5, yeah. We said if we can just record 5, make it a mini series. Hopefully there'll be some lessons learned. And obviously some of the guests we've had on, you know, we had a guy I was in school with, and his name's Mike Hesketh. And Mike Hesketh is a dentist, Navy dentist, who was attached to the Royal Marine Commandos. He was in theatre when you were injured, Mark. And he's fascinating, mate. He left the Navy as a dentist and set up his own naval practice at a risk, invested his money in failing practice, turned it round. Now he provides like a mentoring service for other people, doing really well for himself. And his lessons he learned from being in the Navy and being a dentist to being like
He
business.
was also all arms as well.
Say again?
He also did the commando course as well, didn't
he? Yeah. He had an element of credibility in the sense that from a physical point of view, he was like going to Commando Brigade, wanted to do the commando course. And it's that mindset, you know, and we've had other people who have made businesses, made businesses from watching a YouTube video and going, I've got an idea.
Yeah.
And now that's fueled them with enough to leave the military and you know, it just fascinates me.
When it comes to business, what I've discovered is a lot of people don't understand how difficult it is. Like when you start, I don't know, say you've started a plumbing business, right? You've got to train as a plumber. You've got to get the work. You've got to do the marketing. You've got to answer all the calls. You've got to do the invoicing. You've got to do the tax return and all that shit in the beginning. You wear like 5,000 hats. And then like as you just said with your mate, eventually someone comes along, you're like, right, I need an accountant now. You can do that bit. And you got a bit more capacity and it's a little bit less stressful. Then you're like, oh, I need some help marketing. And then this person comes on and they do the marketing. And then, you know, this person comes on, does this, and this. And then eventually you've got a, you know, successful business, but it's a slog. You know what I mean? You don't just like rock up one day with a great idea and then wake up a week later and it's super successful and all the systems are in place and it's slick and automated and everything's running. It takes ages. And you just got to be kind of resilient to it all and just keep going.
We found that, mate. We found that. Sean Taylor, he founded Zip World.
Oh, yeah, up in North Wales.
Yeah, again, ex-Royal Marine. He said his story, mate, he was the same thing. He was doing the invoices, doing this, doing that. And he was like, I'm not very good at this bit. I'm going to get someone in to do that. And he's gone from having 4 staff to employing 960 people and a wage bill of over £10 million a year, mate. You know what I mean? It is just veterans are doing incredible things in business. And that is what the point of the podcast is to speak to veterans and highlight. There's some people out there doing business who we didn't even know were veterans.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Sean Taylor's an example of that. Sean Taylor's got Zip World and all stuff. He's on Paul's doorstep.
Yeah.
We didn't even know he's a veteran. And it just shows what we can achieve, you know?
Absolutely. And I'd love to see more veterans kind of working together to pump each other up. You know what I mean? Like you just said, again, going back to your mate who, you know, does the editing and producing of your show now. I'd love to see more of that. You know, I'd love to have a podcast and all the crew that I'm with are all veterans and we're all coming up together. And then, you know, eventually you get to a point where you can monetize the podcast, right? And, you know, I'll just use the best example that there is in Joe Rogan. You know, he's a bit of a unicorn, but he sold his podcast for $100 million to Spotify. And I think they pay him $20 million a year now. So then you share that love with the people that help you grow it. And then you've all got this really cool income. And then you do whatever you want. You go throw a couple grand at a charity and put on an event for veterans, open a veteran center, whatever it is. You know, and you just grow it and grow it and grow it and bring more and more veterans in and, you know, just help. The whole brotherhood thing, sisterhood thing doesn't stop when you stop wearing a uniform. It comes out into the civilian world too.
100% agree.
100%
agree. Whenever you come across anyone that's military, there's an instinctive bond there straight away.
Yeah.
And straight away.
Absolutely.
And it's almost like you've known that person for ages. And you can truly, I feel, whenever I meet another veteran or a service person, you can kind of truly be yourself. Mark, it's been amazing. I mean, I can't believe the time has flown so quickly on this pod. It's like your story is brilliant.
Is it gone already, is it?
It doesn't need to go yet. I've got a couple of questions before. I've got just a couple, mate. Just got a couple.
Yeah.
I've got a couple. So the first one is, right, since you've left the military and since you've become a veteran, right, Mark, you have done some incredible stuff. You've met some incredible people, right? You've done it all. Been on the telly box, a film, a book, a documentary, a lot. What's been the standout like pinch me moment where you've gone, holy shit?
Do you know what it is for me? Is I think it was going to the Invictus Games, and it's because of the journey to get there. So when I was medically discharged, one of the things that was hardest for me was to accept that I'd never get to serve my country again and have a Union flag on my chest and do what I love doing. I thought once my uniform was off, those days were over. But the Invictus Games gave me the opportunity again to put on a uniform, a tracksuit with a Union flag on my chest, and then go to war in the sporting arena, but representing the UK again. So then when I went out there, and I did all right when I was out there. I got a couple of gold medals and did a couple of cool things. The end of that journey, the second year in Australia, I was like, that was pretty cool. I got to do something that I thought was gone out of my life forever. And again, it's about representing the UK and the veteran community and showing the rest of the world what it is that we're all about. And I had the opportunity. So that was cool. Like the documentaries and all that shit's cool. I love doing that. That's a lot of fun, but the feelings attached to that, representing your country again was the thing for me.
I love that, mate. I love that. And then I guess the final thing is what's next? What's next for Mark Ormrod?
A shower.
So, yeah, shower. You know what I said earlier about it took me years to feel comfortable with content and doing this, that, and the other, because that's not the way we operate. Something else that's taken me a long time to be comfortable with is talking about money. Now, when I left the military, I jumped straight into the charity world. And I did a lot of stuff where I never got paid. Some stuff cost me money. I traveled all over the world doing like talks and things like this. And it was a hard slog. And I turned 40 last year, and I kind of chunked my life into 10-year chunks. And I said to my wife, this next 10 years is all about business, entrepreneurship, and money. This is about us now. And I haven't put a figure on it yet, but I said to her, I want to earn a ridiculously stupid amount of money, right? And not because I'm fancy. I don't, most of the times when I leave the house, my entire outfit costs about £3.50. But I want to be able, at the end of that 10 years, to turn around. And this is how I see it panning out. People talking about, this veteran, he's done this, he's made this much money, and he had 4 fingers, 1 thumb, and a smartphone. Now, no one's got an excuse then, right? All these people that make excuses about X, Y, Z. If you got 4 fingers, 1 thumb, and a smartphone, you can create a business or multiple businesses which turn over 7 figures a year, which are mostly systemized, automated, and outsourced to other people. So I can just live the life that I, roll around doing jiu-jitsu, doing fundraisers, and still have tons of money coming in the background. And I'll probably give most of it away. Right? I've got pretty much everything I need in my life. I'll probably end up just giving tons away to causes that need it and doing cool shit with it. But I feel now naturally aligned to just go out there and take, put my name on that money and bring it back and do some good stuff with it.
I love that, mate. I love that. And what I love, Mark, is your absolute raw honesty and transparency. That's what I love, mate. There's so many people who
Ferrari along the way, by the way.
Say what?
I'm definitely going to buy a Ferrari along the way, but yeah, most of it's just going to go on doing cool shit.
Mate, honestly, it's been. Right, okay, so we've done this. As I say, we've done about 18 episodes, and and Paul will tell you, I was really nervous about speaking to you, mate.
Oh my, he was a fucking
honestly, like a bit of, and I don't get nervous about speaking to anyone, mate. Okay, like literally anyone, but I was nervous about speaking to you because I don't even know why. Almost like a bit of a fangirl moment. And I'll be honest, do you know what I mean? You're an inspirational bloke, and I followed your journey, as I say, since the first that anyone aware that who Mark Ormrod was other than your close friends and family was when you marched up to get your medal, mate. Okay, after being the first triple amputee. Now, my career in the army was a combat medical technician, so I've deployed all over. as a medic. So I've seen people injured. I've seen people at their very worst. And to see you now, 16, 17 years after almost to the day, actually, from the incident, and seeing how well you're doing is just a massive inspirational thing. And like even you saying at the end there, if you've got 4 fingers and a thumb, what's your excuse? You've took up jiu-jitsu after becoming a triple amputee. So what, you know what I mean? It's like, so what have people got as you say, I'm not going to do that. I've never been good at that. I'm not going to do that. You're an absolute inspiration, mate. And this has been like totally like eye-opening. And even listening to you speak, I've got no doubt when you look back at this in 10 years' time, you'll say the pivotal moment was your appearance on the CAPB podcast.
Absolutely.
What are you laughing at? And that's what's like springboarded you to becoming a multimillionaire. But honestly, mate, it's been an absolute honour and a pleasure, mate.
Well, thank you guys for inviting me on here. It's been a lot of fun. Normally, I have to just talk about getting blown up all the time, which is great. I don't mind that, but every once in a while, it's nice to just talk about other things that I do and I'm passionate about and the future and all that kind of stuff. So, the goal, I think, for this episode of your podcast is to make it your most popular one ever. So if you're listening, don't forget, I'm still a Royal Marines commando in my mind, and I know lots of dangerous people. So if you don't download this podcast and share this podcast and tell everyone how great it was, I will find you, I will hunt you down, and I will Liam Neeson your ass. Right? So download it now.
He's got a point. He will. He will.
Definitely got a point. I'm going to download it, and I'm the fucking host.
Paul's downloading 7.
I can't download it. I haven't edited yet. Listen, mate, you're a busy man. Look, excited to follow you in the future, and thank you so much for giving it your time. Thanks a lot, Mark.
Thank you, lads. Appreciate it.